train to Georgia, getting on a midnight train. Ooh. I don't know why that song is in my spirit. I answered the phone like that twice today. You are listening to the Good Girl Podcast. I am Cameo King, your host, the Good Girl Podcast, a podcast of women's confessions about our flaws, faith, femininity, and culture. Everything is on the table here on the Good Girl Podcast. We destigmatize the messy process of figuring out life. And we have conversations about it, and we're honest about it. And they're raw, transparent, real conversations about, in a sense, the places where we messed up, where the places where we believe something was the truth or a truth at some point, but later on we figured out it was a lie. And I call those conversations confessions. And so we have them here, and it's all right. And we're still good in this process because a lot of my wisdom, a lot of my compassion, a lot of who I am today came by some messy process. And it didn't always have to be mine. You know, I could have learned from my mama. I could have learned from my friends. I could have learned from some story somebody shared. And so this is a learning space. This is a healing space. This is a non-judgmental space. And at the end of the day, it is a space where you are freed from some of the things that have bound you. I feel like I'm about to preach. Freed from some of the things. You know, I really want to liberate folks from, you know, maybe some of these constraints that they've had on who they thought that they should be or who someone told them that they should be other than themselves. So I want you to live in your authentic self. And that's a part of the confession process too, that this is who I am. And you have to be real and you have to own that narrative. So yeah, this is what we're here for. If you haven't already, guys, y'all know something big is coming. November 3rd is right around the corner. It is right around the corner. And if we haven't learned anything this season, is that Black lives are on the ballot. Please make a plan to vote on or before November 3rd. One of the organizations who are advocating for Black lives and who have consistently been advocating for Black lives, and they're actually a nonpartisan organization. You can text BLM vote to 5652. This is Black Lives Matter Michigan. You can text BLM vote to 56525 for more information. Again, Black lives are on the ballot. Please make a plan to vote on or before November 3rd. On to this week's confession, another confession session. Woo, woo. Guys, we're actually going to have a live confession session. Make sure you have liked our page. Make sure you are part of the Free Yourself Conversations group on Facebook. I'm going to get a little bit more active in there. But make sure we have some things coming. Make sure you are a part of that group. We actually have some things we're going to be releasing prior, sometime in November. Around the 14th. Every day is the 14th. The 14th is actually my birthday. So we're going to have, we're going to be releasing some apparel. What is apparel? Apparel. And you guys will probably get some discount codes if you're a part of that group or if you're on our email listserv. So do one or the other. And we'll probably have some I don't know if we'll do pre-orders. Anyway, I need to get back on my business grind. But anyway, this week's confession is it's so appropriate for this time. It's about I mean you'll hear it, but it's about being Black and being anti-Black in the same body, in the same person. And we have a very We went deep, but we didn't go deep. We could go deeper. We probably gonna have like a part 3, 4, 5, 6. But I really want you guys to listen to this and listen to it. Have your hearts open, have your mind open, because I believe, and I stated it in the conversation, that if you exist in the United States, right? Heck, if you exist in the world, there is some form of anti-Blackness in you. It's because we are embedded, because we grew up in this culture who literally reeks of anti-Blackness. So listen to the conversation. But first, let's listen really quickly to whom has this confession. Listen up. If I were to ask the author and life coach Tamika Thomas to describe herself, her answer would be something like this.
I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I would say all the things that I do for other people.
But after a long process of accepting who she is, Tamika now describes herself as a bridge over troubled water.
Bridge is a foundation. A bridge is almost like a vehicle to get a person from point A to point B. So I now look at it as it's my superpower. Like it's who I am.
It took Tamika nearly 10 years to come to this realization, one she initially rejected because she said she felt used.
Because once people got over, like once I helped them cross, a lot of times they like not disappeared completely, but they weren't as prevalent in my life. So they weren't as there, you know.
Tamika says it took the perspective of another person for her to begin to see herself and accept herself in her role as the proverbial bridge.
I never forget this lady told me, Tamika, don't go against the current, go with it. And so when I guess that's how I reconciled. I was like, why do I keep trying to fight this? Why do I keep fighting that I'm this person for like most people in my life, and just go with it? And doing so listen, it has gotten me some bags or two. Right? So,
and that bag includes being an author of a self-help book and a recent release of a 21-day gratitude journal, as well as a life coach. All right. So that is Tamika, and let's hop into this conversation. Don't let her nice, sweet voice fool you. We come with the fire in this conversation. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. Quality healthcare is coming to a neighborhood near you. Sparrow, the Ingham County Health Department, and Dean Transportation are teaming up to bring their mobile health clinic right to your neighborhood. Throughout the month of October through December, the mobile health clinic is offering free health screenings and services at no charge. Yup, free screenings that cover everything from cholesterol to diabetes to blood pressure. Also immunizations, flu shots, and even referrals to cancer prevention screenings. If there are any questions, shoot a quick email to Sparrow Mobile Health Clinic at sparrow.org. Again, that email address, Sparrow Mobile Health Clinic at sparrow.org. I'll also post all the details and the dates on the Good Girl Podcast website and on social media. Black lives are on the ballot this November. If you haven't already, now is the time to make a plan to vote on or before November 3rd. You can text BLM VOTE to 56525. Again, that's BLM VOTE to 56525. All right, Tamika, I'm so excited to have you on the Good Girl Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing so good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I'm excited about your confession. And I want to get right into it. But just to like preface it a little bit, Tamika and I had a conversation beforehand, and we were allowed to go very deep into her confession. And so it's around it's around what a lot of us are dealing with, I believe, right now, and how our existence of being Black, and whether you're Black or you're not Black, the word anti-Blackness shows up in our everyday lives. And Tamika, I appreciate you sharing how anti-Blackness showed up in your life. And so I kind of just gave away your confession, but let's start this right now. So Tamika, what is your confession?
Yes. So my confession, and I am totally at this stage in my life, I'm not going to say I'm embarrassed, because I believe that all of these things that we go through are building blocks for who we're ultimately going to be. So my confession is how anti-Blackness truly showed up in my life, and how for many, many years, even from as a young girl, I would say things like I'm mixed, or, I would try to lessen my Blackness. In certain situations, I wanted to be extra Black. And then in certain situations, like the educational system, workforce, I would often try not to be that token Black girl. I would not want to be, so I acclimated way too many times in order to be accepted.
I want to ask you, why is this your confession? But the first thing, honestly, that comes to my mind when you say that is we're taught this.
Yeah.
We're taught in so many ways that Black is not good, very implicitly and very explicitly. And I don't think we take the time and sit and assess and ask ourselves, is this like, are my actions anti-Black? Because I don't think we've ever had a time to do that. So how did you get to this space of saying, like, my actions, who I was and how I was showing up in these different spaces is anti-Black?
So I think for me, it initially happened when I had kids. So having my sons, it kind of started to show up, but definitely when I had my daughter, and I would like the texture of her hair and the pigmentation of her skin, those different things. I started to realize I never want her because, okay, so when my kids were little, people would always ask me or say things like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. What are they mixed with? And I would get pissed off. I would get so upset because I remember growing up always hearing that. And for me, I associated being mixed with beautiful. So I would think like they must think that I'm pretty. So I have to come up with something that I'm mixed with. But then when my children started to, people would say it about my kids, it really upset me. And I said, I have to break this. I have to break this cycle. And I have to let my kids know that they're beautiful being Black. And so when people would ask me, what are they mixed with? I would say they mama and they daddy, Black and more Black, right? And then I realized like, okay, now I have to step into that. I have to step in the fact or just step in me being a Black woman. Not to say that there's anything wrong with people that are mixed, but that doesn't equate beauty. Like there's so many beautiful people of all different textures of hair, of all different hues. And so for me, it was when my children were born, I definitely did not want them to grow up with this same mindset that this is what makes them attractive, the texture of their hair or the color of their skin.
And it's interesting. We're only talking about right now the physical appearance. We're not talking about the culture. We're not talking about the language. We're not talking about the unique things that make Blackness. And I
Right.
think we are definitely in a point in history where we are truly beginning to embrace everything and understand everything. Of what it means to be Black. And oftentimes, I believe, and even in the movement that we're seeing, Tamika, is that we typically assign anti-Blackness to anyone who isn't Black. Like that those are the only perpetuators of being anti-Black. But what I'm hearing is like, no, not only was I a victim and understand this, I'll say a survivor of the system, but you also at one point in time were a perpetuator of the system, but it was a means to survival.
Yes. And it's also, I mean, if we keep it all the way 100, it is something like you said at the top that we learn, right? So most Black people understand this. When a baby is born, one of the first things that the grandparents, the auntie, the uncles, they do, they come in and they look at their ears and they want to determine what shade this baby is going to ultimately be, because they believe that you could tell by the tip of their ears, or we look at their hair, or we look at, or when we're, to move away from physical appearance, we're taught things like, and I don't know if it happens to young boys. I can only speak from a Black female perspective. Don't be being loud. Don't, make sure that you're using your verbs and you're talking grammatically correct, right? So we're taught, not to say that not talking grammatically correct is not Black, but we know for sure that there's a dialect, right? So when we're in certain situations, we get with our friends, we get with our family, we, may skip a few vowels, things may drop out of the, and we start, right? We start talking with our hands. If you see a group of black women or black men, we clapping and we screaming and hollering, and people on the outside, or maybe even some black people will think, oh my God, they're about to fight. And we just talking about the episode of Girlfriends that we watched on Netflix, right? Or we just we're just being authentically us. And a lot of times we are very passionate people. We are very just emotional people. And so we tend to be a little bit louder. We tend to be a little bit dramatic, and that's okay. But in certain situations, we've been taught that is not okay, that we're being threatened, threatening. We're being too loud, too this, too that, when we wear our hair out, it's this. And we all know that to be true. And these are things that we're taught. Unfortunately, historically, our ancestors this was a means of survival. Yes. So they believed in order to stay in good graces with massa, don't be too loud, don't be too this, don't be too educated. So we could even talk about that, going to get an education and talking grammatically correct. On the inside of our culture, other black folks will say, you talk white. You talk, this is a very deep conversation. And as you talked about, when we talked, we just scratched the surface, but there are so many layers to anti-Blackness. And I believe that it's very easy to point fingers, but I think in order for true healing to start to happen, we have to point the fingers inwardly. We have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, how have we perpetuated these stereotypes? How have we contributed to our own anti-Blackness within our culture?
Yeah. And understanding that in its context. So why, so like you said, it was a means to survival, and it still is today. We still understand that if you have more Eurocentric features, if your hair is a certain grade, that this beauty, it's a currency, and you are privileged in certain areas. If you have, and even if it's I'll call it on trend, but the grade of hair you have, or if you have a certain type of I'm throwing my neck and throwing my hair, and look, I ain't never had a wig in my life. but I get it. And you see us, attaboying and cheering other black. Yes, girl, you look good. And she does look amazing. And these things are authentically black. Like, you will never see this type of hair, this type of style, this type of color, this grade of it, and how we shape it and how we style it and what it goes like. You will never see these things in any other culture, but we have to admit, I believe, that these are very much connected to survival tactics when it comes to like our esteem and how we feel about ourselves and how we look. Like, if I can't walk out the house and feel content that how my hair grows out of my head in its natural state is enough, I think that that's problematic, and not necessarily and people can have their preferences in terms of how they want to wear their hair, but that is very much connected to the fact we grew up in a Eurocentric society, and the fact if your hair was straighter, you would probably most likely get the job.
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. Everything from the texture of our hair and the way that we wear our hair. But if we don't do a good job at esteeming one another and letting the sister know. And so this is something that we kind of talked about earlier when we had our one-on-one conversation. I think that it's so imperative that we cheer on the sister that got her wig and her all the colors and all that good stuff. We cheer her on and we like, yes, but we also cheer on the sister that decides to go bald, or the sister that decides to wear her hair in an afro, or the sister that decides to dread her hair, the sister that decides to wear locks, or whatever it is. We need to be comfortable in all of us, in every way that we come and we present ourselves to this world.
Yeah, because I wanted to make it clear too. I don't want this conversation to be about, I mean, because it goes way deeper than hair, but that those who decide to wear their hair straight, because I wear my hair straight every now and then, or those who decide to wear a wig, that's bad. I don't want
Right.
to say that because again, that is something that we have made our own, that we have that is very intrinsically linked to the Black culture, and no one can do it like Black women in hair. And the fact that our hair can be that versatile is also Black culture. So I just want to
Mhm.
be clear to those ladies. So don't be DMing me. Don't be side eyeing me. Listen. If I could wear a wig 24/7, I probably would, because there's also an ease to it. The fact that I don't have to deal with my hair like I do on the regular. So ladies, please don't come for me like that, because I'm not saying that. Listen, I'm not saying that at all. But this is a part of our history. This is a part of our context, of the context in which we grew up in. So Tamika, how else did anti-Blackness show up in your life?
So it also showed up, as I like kind of mentioned briefly, just in the way that I presented myself. But I noticed, for me, there were times where I did use my anti-Blackness to go higher in areas, where and instead of me stepping up, because I would have employers say things such as, you're not the typical Black woman. And I would just kind of agree with that. And now looking back, like, I wish I could put rewind and say, what do you mean? And have them further explain that. I knew what they meant. I knew exactly what they meant, but I wish I would have, and what that meant. And oh Lord, I don't know if we want to go here, Cameo, but it basically
Go.
means, it basically means that I was being like the house slave or Negro I was being that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was easier to digest. I was easier to present in front of people. I was so much, and instead of me, because when I went home, or not even when I went home, when I left that office, when I clocked out, I got in my car and I listened to Cardi B like everybody else, or I rocked out to, you know what I mean? And I was, ow, hey, I was like everybody else. But inside of the office, I acclimated, and I was easier for them to digest, because I wasn't aggressive as they would think, or I wasn't hard to deal with. I wasn't any of those things. But it was, I literally, when I hit about 30, I don't know, something happens when you transition from your 20s to your 30s. And then again, when you hit 40s, like, hold on to y'all seats, ladies. If you in your 30s, something amazing happens where you start to be like, no, like, I'm not going to. So it doesn't mean that I started going into the office like being quote unquote ghetto, but I stood up for what, instead of me, when they would ask me if I would, work the overtime, where before I would just be like, yes, yes, mass, whatever they needed me to do, because I didn't want to seem threatening, or I didn't want to seem aggressive. I would be like, no, I need so just like my counterparts, just like my male counterparts would do, just like my white counterparts would do. When I would see that they did it and didn't have any repercussion, why is it that as a Black woman, I felt like I couldn't do it?
Mm-hmm. That's so good, and it's so many points that you brought up that I want to touch on briefly. But I just, a lot of what we do is for survival. We
Mm-hmm.
understand the anti-Black politics. We, within our culture and even outside of our culture, we understand that we would be advanced the less Black we feel, or historically that has been the case. And even in
Mm-hmm.
some circles, so we don't talk about it a lot. But I went to, I graduated from Howard University. We are
Mm-hmm.
considered the illustrious, the Mecca, like the epitome of Black excellence. But and there are also folks out there, there are books out there that talks about the privilege and the what word am I looking for? But it's like this almost haughtiness of the fact that I was educated and you were not.
Mm.
That exists even within those circles, and how we, because I'm a part of Howard, you know, and how we very much it's like mm,
Like a social class?
it definitely is definitely classism that exists within some of these circles, but it's almost absent of what has happened historically. You know,
Mm,
it's like we aren't aware that even we are privileged, or you
wow.
aren't aware that when you say or when you do certain things that you are being demeaning and that you are being anti-Black.
Mm,
And even that we can consume Blackness, you know, we can consume Blackness when it entertains us, when it's on TV, but when you see Blackness right in front of you. So, you know, you like Cardi on TV, you like Cardi performing, but if a Cardi walked in front of you in a store that was loud, had long nails, had this long hair, had these high boots that was just extra, I don't think you would consume her the same way you're consuming her now.
right. Oh, oh my goodness. So good.
You know, and I think we need to check ourselves. And it's hard. It's hard because we're constantly told and we're constantly rewarded that Blackness is bad, and the further you are away from Blackness, the better. Like, we're rewarded for that. We're
We are.
rewarded for our speech. We are rewarded for, you know, because we have a certain diction. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was a teacher, and she was explaining, I think, on YouTube or Facebook, but how we have to be aware of how we educate our children. And when we correct their speech and say that when you don't use the ing, so instead of saying, you say
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know,
Right.
we're essentially telling the child that the language that you use at home is wrong and is bad, versus this is just a
Wow.
different dialect.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So much. But however, when you have a little Black boy or a little Black girl that speaks in the way we talk at home, so if they saying I'm finna go, or I'm, different things that we know that we use on a regular basis in the comfort of our own home, which is code switching, right? But why do we have to code switch? Why is there even a thing? Why is that even a thing? Why do we tell our kids, when you get to school, you need to talk like this, and when you get home, you have to talk like that? Like, I hope you send me that YouTube video, because I need to let people know that it is okay. It is okay for us to be authentically us. It is also okay to be educated, and to not, that doesn't mean that you're less Black, because maybe your family does not talk like that. But there, oh my God, I wonder, and I can only speak from an African American woman experience, but I often wonder if white folks have these conversations. Like, are they sitting around the dinner table having these conversations with their children?
I doubt it, because it's so funny, because their culture, who they are, is the standard.
Yes.
You know, the music that they listen to, the conversations they have, the expressions, the TV shows, like, that is the standard. So it is
Mm.
accepted, and it is normalized in the workplace. The fact that, yep, every weekend you go, you know, I don't know what white folks do. You know, I just but it's just some things that are intrinsic to white culture that y'all do,
Yes.
and that we may think is like straight up, like, why would you go skinny dipping and ice cold wet, like, why would you do that, you know? But those things are accepted because it's understood that's what they do. But when it comes to us,
Yes.
us banging out Cardi,
On Saturday and on Sunday, we got Never Would Have Made It, right?
listen.
That's accepted. We know that on Saturday morning, when that music come on, you get your butt up and you start cleaning. We know that.
Listen.
Right? And then we also know when the praise and worship is on and the bacon is cooking, it's time for church, right?
That
Those
is
are things that are just intrinsic into our culture and who we are.
so. Once you have recognized, I guess, your anti-Blackness, or if it rises up in you, what do you think are the steps to become pro-Black, I guess, or to begin to honor your Blackness, honor, where you come from. And I keep saying honor because like that is my thing. Like honoring,
Yeah.
I don't know, I need to look it up because I make this connection. It could be completely false, but I make the connection of honoring to honesty. And so to me, it's about being honest about who you are, honest about where you are in any situation, and honest about like even our ancestry, honest about our Blackness. And so I think that's a part of the process, but I also think it's a daily like unpacking or a daily like putting on. And so what does that process look like for you? And or like how did you, because it's a process, Tamika, and it's something we have to do daily because we are bombarded, whether we are aware of it or not. Just and I'll let you answer the question. I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you answer the question. But I just think of things like just the tiny things. Like I let my I haven't birthed any kids, but I have a nonprofit, Grit Glam and Guts, and I allowed the students, like every year I allow them to run the Grit Glam and Guts social media. And sometimes they'll follow people. And, sometimes I'll check in. So it's run by teens. And so I'll check in and I like a couple times, because I don't know who they follow, and a couple times I'll check in and I just noticed every other person they were following had the aesthetics of Kim Kardashian. And I was like, I wasn't in tears, but I was just like, I cannot stand racism because that's what it is. And I don't just think they're aware of it. And I don't think we're aware of it when we follow people that we think are beautiful or that we admire, or in what it's doing to our psyche. Like that it's telling when I look nothing like her.
Man. Oh my gosh.
So how do you... like, how do we teach our children? How do we begin to unpack that, those different things?
Yeah, so I believe it starts, of course, internally, and it starts with us. So there's a process that I actually do, and I take a lot of my coaching clients through it. And I daily, I look myself in the mirror, and if there's ever been anything that I've did to myself, right? So I repent to myself. I ask myself for forgiveness if I've showed up in any way that was unauthentic. So whether that is with my gender, with my race, with my ethnicity, with my being a mother, being a wife, like whatever, right? So I look myself in the mirror and I say, Tamika, I'm sorry for it. And I had to go back, right? So I had to go back and say, Tamika, I'm sorry that I used to tell people that you were Puerto Rican or whatever, like looking myself in the mirror. I apologize to myself for those things. Or Tamika, I apologize for saying I have a bad hair day. Like ain't nothing bad about my hair. I got hair on top of my head, right? And this may seem like cheesy, but it's something that I've really had to do to walk myself through it. The other thing that I do is I acknowledge who I am as a Black woman. So there's plenty of times that I had to look myself in the mirror, butt bookie naked, as we say, right? And say, Tamika, I love these hips. Because one thing about Black women and Black men as well is we were like genetically modified, right? So they would get this slave and put them together and say they would make babies. Like we were like, gosh, like just think about that. Let that sit with you for a moment. So when we look at our big butts and our big hips and our big breasts and our full lips and things like that, that people put us together to make us look the way that we look, right? And so I would honor that. I would honor my great grandmother that had to go through that process. But I also do what you just said. I honor them for fighting. I honor them for staying strong. I honor them for the hours that they had to sit in the sun. And so doing that, it makes me, when I had to ride public transportation, I always set my butt in the front. When I was in my master's program and my postgrad programs, I always rose my hand and I always asked the question. These things came with time because I would constantly think back and say, say, there was a period of time where my folks couldn't sit in these classrooms. There was a period of time where my folks couldn't sit at this place in the bus. There was a period of time where when I go to a restaurant, you bet not sit me in the colored section, because believe it or not, y'all, those places still exist. Just because they don't have the signage that says it, there is oftentimes that they will sit the Black family near the kitchen or near the bathroom. So I am woke to all that. And when I see that those experiences happen, now it's one thing if that's the only table open in the restaurant, but not every, but a lot of Black people know the experience of getting sat in the back of the restaurant, or, tucked away. And those things still happen in 2020. When that happens to me and my family, I stand up and I said, no, ma'am, no, sir. We're not sitting there. You're going to sit us somewhere closer and up front, and so we could be seen. So that's how I honor who I am as a Black woman. And I do it with grace. I do it with mercy, and I do it with love, because all of that is what makes me a beautiful, positive Black woman.
Tamika, like, this conversation could go on for like 24 hours. Because you hit, like, it's like, I feel like I need to close it out now, but it's like you hit, when you said we were genetically modified, my God, like, in what that looks like through our bloodstream. There was a study that said, like we just don't understand how much things flow through our bloodline. And so the study was that, maybe how I stand, how I relax, how I put my hands on my hip, or if I feel relaxed with my hands up above my head. The study showed that a lot of that came from our ancestral line, that maybe your great grandmother carried water on her head for hours. And so that's why you feel comfortable with your hands above your head. And so when I think about some of the atrocities that have happened to us, and the fact that folks literally said, if you don't have sex with this person, you have no connection with. If you don't use your body as a way to produce human capital and human resource for me, you're going to, what does that do to someone's psyche? And how is that passed along? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Woo! I feel a part two coming, because this is so deep.
And it's just like, and I want to make this clear as I close this out. I feel like a preacher because I feel like I didn't say it 12 times, but but I'm not in any way, shape, or form blaming us. I'm not saying it's your fault that you are anti-Black. I'm not saying, you're bad necessarily because you're anti-Black. What this conversation is meant to do is to hopefully open our eyes to how we have survived and existed in the system, and also how it is still harmful to us and harmful to our progress, and also harmful to our sisters and brothers. Because the other thing that I said I was going to wrap up, because the other thing that I wanted to touch on is, like, while we're talking about, ourselves and how we internalize this oppression and how we internalize this hate, we also, begin to project that hate onto the next Black girl, the next Black woman who is actually free, who is loving on her Blackness, who is excited about her natural hair, who shows up fully in her purple long weave, who we begin to oppress her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Tamika, part 2 is when?
Girl, let's get it, because this is something that needs to be said. And I feel like we're at the space and the time where people are ready to hear it. 10 years ago, myself, I wouldn't even have acknowledged it. But I think that that's the key, is coming to the acknowledgement that, maybe I have participated in some anti-Blackness myself, and then just healing yourself. Like, we are healers, you know, man, as you were talking, so many different things came up. But I'm like, I'm not going to even expand because again, we would be here forever, but we have the ability to heal. It starts with us. It starts with us accepting who we truly are. So that way, the little boys and the little girls that look like us, they can feel free to, and not even them, but the sister, the brother, you know, our cousins, our family, even, man, we have the power to reach forward and reach back. So maybe us living authentically who we are can heal our parents, can heal our grandparents, and let them realize that they don't have to stand in captivity anymore, that they're no longer, you know, under that same control and rule. Like, imagine that. Whew.
I just lifted my hands. Like, we don't even look at it like that. At least I didn't. I'm gonna say that. At least I didn't. That my healing is not only connected to reaching forward, but that it's connected to, you know, like other folks that I'm like older generations, that when they see me living this way, that it brings it heals something in them. It frees something in them. Because honestly, that's what has happened with this. It's part millennial and part Generation Z, I believe. They have showed up. We have shown up in a way where it's like, take it or leave it. This is who I am. And it has caused, you know, I'll say the older millennials. It has caused the older millennials. It has caused baby boomers comes before the millennials. It has caused like these different generations in the way we think about things to like assess again, to say, maybe like it worked for my generation and it was a survival tactic for me and it was good for me during that time. But let's really show what it really truly is.
Yes.
So to me, we gonna stop. This is a good place to stop and put a pin in it. It's a good place to stop. So Tamika, thank you so much for coming on the Good Girl podcast. I appreciate your, you know, just because I just that confession of acknowledging and admitting and confessing, and then even through your healing process that you at one point in your life, you know, like you were anti-Black, but it's a hard confession, but it's true for all of us.
Yes. I thank you for allowing me to share, because I know that in transparency and in authenticity, there's healing for other people. So like Camille said, y'all don't come for me because I'm looking. I love being Black now. I'm fully, you know, and there's areas of my life where I'm constantly, one thing I love about Michelle Obama's book is becoming, right? So we're constantly becoming. So it's not like I've arrived, and I don't know if I'll ever just arrive fully, but every single day I have the opportunity for myself, for my parents, for my children, for my brothers and sisters that share the same blood as me and those that don't, to really just become more authentically Black.
Yes. All right, that is it. We're going to stop right here. This is the Good Girl Podcast.